Hoop Heads podcast is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
Hello, Hoop Heads. This is Alan Stein Jr. My new book, Raise Your Game, High Performance Secrets from the Best of the Best, will be available from all major book retailers on January 8th. Raise Your Game takes a rare peek behind the curtain and shows you what the top coaches and players in the game do during the unseen hours. I share their routines, rituals, and habits, as well as proven strategies that you can implement with your team immediately. If you want to maximize your coaching impact and influence, order your copy today at raiseyourgamebook.com.
I had a face-to-face, coffee meeting with the CEO, and I said, hey, if I'm going to do this, I want to make sure that you guys want to do things the right way. And when I had that conversation with him and he told me, this is what we want to do, this is what we're looking to do, we want to truly help players and help coaches, I was sold. And from that day on, we've continued to look at the different ways that we can help benefit coaches. At the end of the day, yes, we're selling a shooting machine, but we want to make sure that the product that we're selling actually helps coaches and players get better.
Jefferson Mason is currently the partnership manager, marketing lead, and product captain at Dr. Dish Basketball. As a player, Jefferson was named to the All-American team at Minnesota State Mankato, where he played in the Division II Final Four. Following college, Jefferson embarked on a 5-year professional career that included stops in Germany, Romania, Luxembourg, and the NBA D-League. Following his playing career, Jefferson was the director of the Minnesota Timberwolves and Minnesota Lynx Youth Basketball Academy, where he worked with young players to help them improve their basketball skills. Jefferson has worked as an NBA skills trainer and is a player development specialist. When an opportunity came his way to work for Dr. Dish, Jefferson joined the company that makes the most advanced shooting machines on the market today, including the brand new CT model. Jefferson is responsible for content creation, marketing, and partnerships at Dr. Dish. He also attends clinics and events throughout the country representing the Dr. Dish brand. You can help the Hoop Heads podcast brand by leaving us a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to the show. You can hear the Hoop Heads podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and our newly created YouTube channel. Tell your friends about the show and help Jason and I grow the game of basketball. You'll find plenty of great wisdom to improve your game as you enjoy this episode of the Hoop Heads podcast with Jefferson Mason from Dr. Dish Basketball, home of the world's best shooting machine. Hello and welcome to the Hoop Heads podcast. It's Mike Lindsay here with my co-host Jason Sunkel, and tonight we are pleased to welcome from Dr. Dish Basketball, Jefferson Mason. Jefferson, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to get going here.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to start out by going back to when you were a kid and talk a little bit about what got you into the game of basketball when you were young and really what made you fall in love.
Yeah. So, initially the first time I played basketball that I can remember when I was really, really young. I think maybe I was in second grade or so. My dad and my brother, who's a year older than me, we were entered into this YMCA league, and I remember playing, and my brother was so much more aggressive than me. I actually did not want to be touched. I was afraid of the ball when it came to me. And after the first few games, I said, this is not the thing for me. I think my dad at the time, who was my coach, probably agreed and just said, hey, this kid's probably not going to do anything athletically. He's a little tentative. So that was my first initial experience with basketball. I didn't really play too much after that, for several years. And then once I started, getting into, I want to say 5th or 6th grade, I started playing basketball with my cousins and my brother, just at the park and for fun. Nothing too competitive, just more so the guys were doing it, I'm going to do it myself. I was a little bit younger than most of my friends, so naturally I was smaller, much thinner. So I got pushed around a lot and all that. And so it kind of deterred me, I think, initially from playing sports in general. But that was kind of my first instance, with basketball. I know shortly after that, I grew a little bit. I started to enjoy the competitiveness, I think, a little bit more. And actually, when I was in 7th grade, I decided to try out for my middle school basketball team. And I made the team. to my surprise. And, one thing that I was, decently good at during that period of time was I was a really good defender. I wasn't overly aggressive, but I was really good at gambling. And I don't think any coach would say that that's a good thing, but I like to go for steals. I like to, do crazy things and try to get the basketball and get fast breaks. And so the cool thing about that is I played on that team, and that's what I did, and I was excited about it. But my future high school coach actually saw me play when I was a seventh grader, and had asked me if I wanted to try playing travel basketball. And at the time, I had no idea what travel basketball was. I had no idea about sports in general. My father passed away when I was 11 years old. So I really didn't have somebody that pushed me towards sports or said, hey, you should try this, you should do that, or you should play AAU basketball or anything like that. It kind of just came through me that way. And I had my mom talk to him, and I'll never forget this. He called my mom and said, hey, we'd like to have Jefferson, play on our traveling team. And my mom talked to him for a few minutes and hung up the phone and said, I think he's a weirdo. Don't ever talk to that guy again. And this guy ended up being, one of my high school coaches. So it's kind of funny how things worked out. But that was kind of my first instance of, getting into organized basketball and all that good stuff.
So at that time, as you were, when you were growing up there in elementary school, did you play other sports besides basketball kind of in that interim time, or you were just kind of away from sports completely?
Yeah, you know what? Around that seventh grade, eighth grade time frame, that's when I really started to try new things. And like I said, I didn't already have a love for basketball or anything like that. I actually, did track, and I was pretty good at that. I did soccer for a couple of years, and then I also did wrestling for about a year and a half. And actually, stopped wrestling because they didn't really have anybody in my weight class, and I actually had to wrestle a girl. She ended up beating me and pinning me, and at that moment in time, I realized that
was your time to retire.
You literally tapped out after that.
That's one of the that's the rare double sport combination. There's very few wrestling, basketball, dual athletes. You don't see that too often.
No, not at all.
You're in a unique class.
Yeah, and you know what? I joke about it, but it was good for me to try out a lot of different sports and kind of figure out what my body did well, what I enjoyed, what my body couldn't take. I played a little bit of football as well. I got hit a couple times and realized I definitely can't do this. So it was a way for me to kind of, dwindle down to the one or two sports that I wanted to be involved in, being that, I never had somebody, I never had a father or anybody like that pushing me towards, a sport that they liked or something that they wanted me to do.
So as you kept, growing in the game of basketball and you had that opportunity to play on the travel team with your eventual high school coach, what were some of those experiences that made you start to take the game more seriously and really get involved in it more deeply than you had been in the past where you're just kind of dabbling in it?
Well, you know what? I think what it was for me is when I first played on that traveling team, it was the first time that I had really hung out with guys that were my age. And a couple of guys actually that played on that team, my very first team, are still good best friends of mine right now. And so I wanted to play basketball, be a part of the team, and do all of that because I really enjoyed playing and being around those guys, and they were my friend. And that's when I was like, you know what, let me keep going with this because I want to be able to play with these guys. I want to, keep these guys in my life. They're my friends. And as I continued to do that, I think my competitive drive really started to grow. I started to feel what it felt like to win basketball games and to be able to score on people. And once you get a taste of that, I think, especially at a young age, you don't want anybody ever to take that away from you. And so that 7th, 8th grade year when I first started, I started to really develop that competitive drive. And that's what really, set me off and got me going on my way.
So the competitive drive then led you to do what on the outside of your team practices? So at that point, how did you go about getting better and improving yourself outside of the confines of your team?
Yeah, I think, with me, I'm 30 years old, so, back when I was young, there wasn't a lot of, skills trainers and people that were, willing to work with players other than maybe your direct coach. And even then, there wasn't a lot of that. So for me, it was just, finding some of the older guys at the park, playing with my older cousins and my brother, and having them come to the park and play with me. And what we did is we just played for hours on end. I mean, we would just play, 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 play. There wasn't any specific training that I was doing at that time. It was just, hey, I want to compete. I want to be better than my brother. I want to be better than my older cousins. I want to be better than, the kid down the block. I just wanted to be the best at it. And so I just found anybody that wanted to play, at the park, at my cousin's house, at a friend's house, and I would just continue to play.
Can you compare and contrast what that experience was like for you compared to, let's say, if you were growing up in the system today where, again, there's obviously a lot more skills training available. There's a lot more with the internet and just being able to search out information. And then with all the way AAU basketball has exploded and the amount of summer teams, like if you look back on your development as a player where you were playing with older kids, you were going to the park and playing for 2, 3, 4 hours at a time versus kids today who are playing in a more structured environment with a coach, a lot of times with kids their own age. Can you talk a little bit about how you would compare those two systems and maybe how they're different, and then which one you probably would prefer if you had been given a choice?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, it worked out great because I gained a love for the game. Before I got into any really truly serious training, before anybody was telling me, hey, you need to spend this amount of time in the gym, you need to work on this, you need to work on that, I had already developed a love for the game. So I wanted to be on the basketball court as much as possible. And so, naturally, when I did start, to work with coaches and people that started to find, flaws or things in my game that I could work on, I had no problem with going on my own and working on that, or taking their advice and working with them because I wanted to do it. I enjoyed and I liked it. I think nowadays kids start playing sports so early in an organized setting that it quickly becomes almost like a job to them. It's one of those things where, a parent has to say, hey, it's time to get ready. We got to go to training, or we have to go do this. And sometimes you'll hear the kids say, oh, my goodness, I don't want to go to practice, or I don't want to go to training. And they really don't want to be there. And then, on the flip side, you do have the kids that are just naturally competitive right off the bat. They want to get better and they want to do these things. But a lot of kids, I think their parents put it on them of the sport that they played, or what they did when they were younger, and trying to get their kid, maybe ahead of the curve a little bit earlier. And sometimes, in my opinion, what that does is it forces a kid down a road that maybe they're not ready to go down right away. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if your kid isn't having fun, or if you're not having fun, you're not going to want to do anything in your spare time that involves that. So the biggest difference, I think, for me and kids maybe growing up during my time than now, is that the game has become more of a business sooner for kids nowadays than it did, when I was coming up. I didn't really start to feel like, it was more than just basketball until I got to maybe my junior or senior year in high school. But even then, it didn't really hit me until I got to college.
Yeah, I think I'm a little older than you. I'm 48, and so I can totally relate to the experiences that you had because I spent my time early as a basketball player. The AAU system, as we know it today, didn't exist in my time, and so I spent the majority of my time playing with older kids and college guys and adults, on the playground, and I feel like that really was a huge piece of my development as a player because I had to learn how to use my body and be strong and be tough and be competitive, or I couldn't even get on the court, let alone, forget about trying to play. Just to be able to get on the court, was a challenge. And so you had to be able to step up to those kinds of, the physical play and just the adapting to different ways and styles of playing. Whereas kids today, again, they play in an organized setting with kids their own age. There's always a coach, there's always a referee, and I think you miss out on a lot of important things in terms of development. And then to your point, when that business side of it starts so early, You see kids, unfortunately, that, have started playing in second or third grade, and by the time they're in eighth or ninth grade, they're done with the game. And that's the thing that I hate to see. Like you said, they haven't developed that love for the game because it just becomes something that, rather than something they love, it becomes just a part of their everyday routine. And it's not that they get to go play basketball, but sometimes it's they have to go play.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you think about it too, when you're in a structured system right off the bat, and you're going through all these different things with your coaches and your team in that setting, you kind of lose a little bit of the edge in the sense of, you know, you don't experience adversity on that level of going to the park and, losing a basketball game and having people tell you to get off the court, you're not good enough. There's a lot of things that you have to overcome, when you're just in the street playing. If you're with a group of guys that, are not going to just let you step on the court, there isn't a coach or there isn't somebody saying, hey, you automatically get this time or you automatically get a chance. You have to really love it and you have to take it in those settings. And I think that a lot of kids lose that, adversity. They lose the opportunity to learn from that. And as they go through the system, sometimes when things don't go their way or something hard hits them, they're not built to handle that properly. And like you said, what happens is a lot of kids by eighth grade, by ninth grade say, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. This is too much for me. Partly because it's been forced down their throat, but then also they just haven't dealt with that type of adversity before.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that kids just get to a point where if it's not fun and if they haven't had that mental toughness to be able to stand up for themselves on the playground and call a foul or figure out how to pick teams or how to negotiate their way on to being the fifth player on a 5-man
Yeah.
team to be able to get into the next game, or to face the idea of, if I lose, I got to sit for an hour before I get back on the court. It's sort of a different kind of pressure and a different kind of mental toughness that's required in order to be able to do that. Then again, when you're at an AAU tournament and you lose, and you're playing again in an hour, regardless of the result of the first game. And I think that's one of the
Right.
things that, after talking to coaches, I think sometimes coaches feel like that today's player doesn't have the same level of competitiveness, and that the game itself doesn't necessarily, each individual game doesn't mean as much to
Right.
some of the players today as it did, simply because of that fact of kids aren't growing up on the playground anymore.
Right. I agree 100% with that.
So when we go back to you being in seventh and eighth grade and it kind of being your first experience, and now you're in the off season, you're playing, and you're working on the playground, and kind of beginning to get the idea of working on your game. At what point in your high school career did you start to think that, hey, I might be able to continue my career as a college player?
Well, you know what? Um, my first 2 years in high school were a little bit tough. Initially the high school that I was supposed to go to, at the time was not really good at basketball. Our rival high school, which was just down the street, was had about two or three Division I guys at that time. And I made the decision to, instead of going to the school that I had, that was in my district and some of the kids that I had been playing with the last couple of years, I decided to go that route, just because I saw the glitz and the glamour of it, the high level players, and I wanted to be a part of that so badly. I ended up going to that high school my freshman year, and struggled heavily. It just wasn't a good fit for me. The coaches and players were great. It's just I wasn't at that point in my career yet where making a change that big, would benefit me in any way. And it more so hurt me, just I wasn't prepared for it. And so that freshman year was really tough for me. In my head, I at times thought, do I want to keep playing basketball, or, do I want to try doing something different? I had been doing track as well. And I decided at the end of the day that I wanted to go back to playing with my friends and the guys that I knew, the prior 2 years. And I got to a point where I said, you know what, I don't care if, my high school, at the time, Cooper, if they're bad, maybe I can be a guy that can help change that around. And from that moment in time, I transferred back to my original high school, and it was kind of all she wrote. I had a decent sophomore year, and then going into my junior year was the first time that I actually played on an AAU team that traveled out of state. Prior to that, I played for one of my buddies' dad's team that played only locally in Minnesota. We played only in Maya's tournaments that were, in cities all around our area. We never traveled. So I never really did the circuit or anything like that. My junior year, going into my junior year, I had a team. At the time, they were called Team Minnesota, and they had a lot of high-level players. I had a friend of my uncle that had asked me to come try out and play for the team. I ended up making the team, and it was my first experience with traveling and playing outside of the state. That year was an eye-opener to me of the competition and the level of players all over the place. And in that moment in time, I knew that I wanted to set it a goal to be a college basketball player. But at that time, I was nowhere near being a college basketball player.
So now you see your eyes are opened up to the level of play and the number of players that are talented all throughout the country. Then what do you do after that happens? You go back and you kind of reset your mentality, you reset what you're going to do in order to make that dream a reality. So how did you change your mindset, or what did you change in terms of your preparation for the next season to get you to where you wanted to go?
Well, the first thing that I did was I sat down with who's my good friend Jermaine Davis is his name. I actually played 7th and 8th grade basketball with him. I played high school basketball with him, and I actually played my last year of college basketball with him as well. But we sat down after that summer going into our junior years, and we literally looked each other in the eyes and said, what do we want to do in the next 2 years? And we made a list. We said, we want to play varsity basketball. We want to, make it to the state championship. We want to be known in our city. We want to get college, scholarships and play in college. And we made this list of the things that we wanted to do. And then we looked each other in the eye and said, we're going to hold each other accountable in every way possible to achieve our goals. And after that summer going into my junior year, me and my best friend, Jermaine Davis, we worked relentlessly, 1 to 2 times a day in the gym, outside of the gym, at other high schools, in practice. We played one-on-one. We did, as much strength conditioning as we knew how to do. We just played basketball and worked our butts off. And that was the moment that I realized I set goals for myself, and I knew that I wanted to achieve them. And I told myself, I'm going to do anything in my power to obtain these goals. And one of the biggest reasons, for me is I wanted to leave some type of legacy. I didn't have anybody in my family that had played sports athletically. I wanted to be the first. I wanted to be a person that did something different in my community. Where I came from wasn't the best area or the best high school. So I wanted to do something that I would be remembered by. And so when we set these goals, it meant something to us to achieve them, because we knew at the end of the day, if we achieved these goals, we would do great things.
I think that's tremendous that you had a friend that was equally as committed to that as you are. I think that's pretty rare to find somebody who's a high school teammate that has the same kind of drive and the same kind of will and has the same goal in mind. So I'm sure that was a key to your development.
Oh yeah, definitely. The other thing too is we joke about it all the time is he was my best friend, but he was my biggest competitor. When we were on the basketball court, I absolutely hated him. When we went against each other in practice, I did, and I know he hated me as well. The other thing too is I did not want him to be better than me, and it sounds weird, any accolade that he ever got in his career, when we were in high school and college and whatnot, I was the first person there to support him in the happiest for him. But the competitiveness in myself wanted me to be the best. And he was the exact same way. He wanted to be the best. And instead of, tearing each other down, instead of, trying to verbally say who was better and all this, what we did is we just competed. And what that did is it made us raise our level of competition. It also increased our skill level, and everybody else around us that saw us compete wanted to jump on ship with us. And that's how we ultimately helped make all the guys around us on our team better players. So it was just one of those things where it was a perfect storm of 2 guys that, wanted to compete and get better. And ultimately what happened is that's what we did.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, again, like I said, I got to believe that that's very rare to find somebody that's just as driven as you. And so, when you think back now to your high school career, what's the one memory? If you had to pick out one thing that stands out from your high school career, what's the one memory that you would share with somebody?
Well, our very first game of my senior year, we came off our junior year. We were, I want to say, 16 in 13 on the season. It was the best season that the school had had in so many years. And going into our senior year, we had a lot of the same guys coming back. We had some young talent coming in. And in our eyes, we thought that we were going to be a really good basketball team. And we were planning on all these great things to happen, throughout the season and all that good stuff. And I can never forget the very first game of the season. We played Hopkins High School, as they're called, and every year they have 2 to 3 Division I guys come out of that high school. And I remember we played them the very first game of the season, and they kicked our butts. And we didn't play bad, but they kicked our butts because they were just that good. And I remember after that game, everybody's heads were down. We were so disappointed. We had an amazing crowd. We were so excited to get the season going, and we felt like we let everybody down. And I can never forget when we were in that locker room and our coach finished talking. I remember Jermaine and I and us standing up, and we said, this is just one bump in the road that we got to get over. And if we can get through this and learn from this and do what we know we can do, we can have a tremendous season. And after that moment, I think we ran off, the next 20 out of, or 22 out of, 23 games we won. I mean, it was ridiculous. Nobody could beat us. We were just demolishing everybody by 15 to 20 points. We ended up going to the state championship, and getting runner up my senior year. But it was so cool to see how we reacted as a team from that first game and adjusted and had the best season in school history. And so for me, overcoming that obstacle, as a young player, with the group of guys that we had and having that season is something that I will never forget in my entire life.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, to be able to at that level to be able to have that kind of mindset and the ability to bounce back from that loss. Because again, high school kids, if anybody out there is listening and can think back to their own high school career or what they were like when they were 16, 17 years old, oftentimes we lack the maturity to be able to kind of see the bigger picture. And that's awesome that you guys were able to see that bigger picture and then take something that, you know, again, is a loss, but at the same time, something that you could learn from. And then the fact that it was able to spur you on to have the kind of success that you ultimately ended up having that senior year is a testament to, what you and Jermaine were able to do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, the adversity piece is what we were able to handle so well, which is one of the things. Like I said, I don't think a lot of kids have these days. We were used to hitting bumps in the road and getting over it and not becoming selfish. I mean, it could have been easy to say, you know what, forget it. I'm going to do my own thing. He's going to do his own thing. I'm going to try to just look to do my get my own scoring, or I don't care about those guys. And it could have went crazy from there. I mean, we had a lot of good players that could have just thought for themselves, but we said, you know what, we're going to remain as a team. We're going to play as a team. We're going to do everything for the guy next to us. And at the end of the day, if we do things the right way, everybody wins. And to like you said, to be able to I look back now as a 30-year-old man and look back and say when I was 17, 18 years old, to be able to do that is one of the biggest accomplishments, I think, even to this day in my life, that I'm proud of, that I was able to do.
All that being said, how much does that state championship game that you didn't win burn in your mind?
You know what, it was just fuel to the fire to me. I had a taste of what being in the limelight and being in that moment felt like, and it was fuel to me to say, you know what, I don't want to be in that position again. I want to be in the position where if I get there, I win and I'm not on the losing side. So for me, it just meant, what can I do as a person to be better? What can I do as a player to be better? How can I learn from this moment so that if the opportunity presents itself again, I'm more prepared and I can lead my team and be on the opposite side of it next time.
So you're getting ready to go on to the next level. Can you talk about your recruitment and what that process looked like for you and just how you ended up making your decision of going to Northern Colorado?
Yeah, so my recruitment was actually pretty crazy. I didn't start getting any college scholarship offers until probably midway through my senior year, towards the end, actually. I started getting Division I college letters before my senior year, but I didn't have anybody kind of pull the trigger. I think people and coaches and scouts were looking at me as a potential player, but just didn't know how I would evolve as a player as the year went on. And I think that I was on a lot of teams' radar as maybe the second or third or fourth option if guys didn't commit. And so I didn't really get a lot of, those Division I or even Division II offers until the end of my senior year. But the cool thing that happened for me was, towards the end of my senior year, when I kind of first got my first offer, it was from University of Eastern Illinois. And I didn't really know anything about them. I didn't know where they played, but I knew it was Division I, and I was the happiest guy in the world. If they would have had the papers there, I probably would have signed on spot because I was just so happy to have that opportunity to play at that level, and I never thought that I would. I was always working towards it, but when you're that age and something happens that it's unexpected, you just don't really know how to handle it. And I would have signed that day probably on the line, but luckily for me, I had my coaches and some other people around me that just said, hey, let's play this out and see how things work out. And I eventually got another college scholarship from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and the assistant coach there actually was a guy I played for at his time, his girlfriend's AAU team. And so that's how I initially met him. And they were kind of recruiting me and following me, but never really offered me. And so what happened is towards the end of my senior year, they gave me a college scholarship offer. And I actually, basically committed to them and said, hey, I'm going to go. I'm going to play with you guys. I feel comfortable. I know, you coach as assistant coach. It's a beautiful area, beautiful school. I kind of want to sign and finish my senior year out and not have anything to worry about. The bad news with that, what happened is the head coach got fired, and the assistant coach thought that he was going to get the job and ended up not getting the job. And so I didn't feel comfortable going there after all of the changes, so I kind of reopened my recruitment. Shortly after that, I got a college scholarship offer from the University of Delaware, which was in the same conference. So I thought it was kind of cool. In my competitiveness, I said, you know what? I want to go there because I want to compete now against this other school that, for whatever reason, they did a coaching change, and I just think that it would be cool. I felt comfortable. I knew the conference. I had done my research. So I committed to, the head coach there. He actually flew out to watch me play in my section championship, or excuse me, section semifinal game. And the very next day when he flew back, I got a call and he said, yeah, I've just been fired. So I don't know what you want. I don't know what you want to do, but I'm just giving you a heads up. So at that moment in time, I'm in the section semifinal, and this is all going down, and I'm worried about, am I going to have a college scholarship? Where am I going to go next year? And I told myself, you know what? I'm going to stay with University of Delaware, even though they changed coaches. I've been through this. I just want to, get a college scholarship, and I'm going to do my best. I've achieved a goal that I never thought that I would, hit. And I got a call from the new head coach, and to this day, I'll never forget it. He called me and he said, hey, we'll honor your scholarship, for this upcoming year. But I can tell you this, I don't recruit Midwest kids. I only recruit East Coast kids. And, no matter what you do or what happens, you probably won't have a scholarship that next year.
Wow, what a great salesman.
Yeah. And so for me, I said, you know what, I can take this and be mad, or I can say thank you for being, transparent with me and see if there's another option for myself. So, I was a little bit disappointed, but I had, our section championship game coming up. And I just said, let me finish this year out. So what I did is I finished the season out, and one of the other schools that was kind of recruiting me a little bit, but hadn't offered, was Wichita State. And so Wichita State's associate head coach at the time, his name was Tad Boyle. I'll never forget, he reached out to me and said, hey, I know that, you're interested in Wichita State, and they're interested in you, but I'm going to head over to Northern Colorado. I just received a head coaching job. And, some of the people that I've talked to and that I know, they said some good things about you. So, I would love for you to come out and see the campus, and bring your mom, and let us know what you think. And if so, we can talk from there. And so it was the end of the season, and I didn't really have any options at that point. So I said, hey, let me check it out. And I went out there, and I absolutely loved it. My mom loved it. It was beautiful. The coaches, were amazing. They were great. And I signed on the dotted line, and ended up going there, and spent 2.5 years there playing.
Yeah, it's amazing sometimes how the recruiting trail works, especially for a guy who's kind of in your position where you're a Division I player, but you're not a highly recruited Division I player. And,
Yeah.
sometimes things work out because, the right guy transfers in your position, or a coach leaves, or a coach comes, or somebody knows somebody in a relationships. And it's kind of amazing the number of stories of guys that, both I know personally, and then people we've talked to on the podcast that have had sort of a similar story to yours, and that, people think of recruiting and they think of, what recruiting is like for the top, 25 players in the country. And that's a totally different animal than the kind of recruiting that I went through, or that you went through, where, you're just hoping to get, an opportunity to play college basketball at the Division I level, let alone having a pick of 200 schools. There's very few kids who that happens for.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was, and I will always be forever grateful for that opportunity. Even though I only spent 2.5 years there, forever grateful for that opportunity to go there and get my school paid for, and to play at that level.
What was the biggest adjustment like when you went from high school to college?
Well, I had to quickly realize that I wasn't the man. I can tell you this, and it sounds crazy, but you know, I was a pretty good high school basketball player in Minnesota. Our team did some really good things, and naturally in my head, I thought I was better than what I was. And when I went out to college, I realized that I was playing with and against grown men. And I came into my freshman year, I was a slender guy. I was about 6'4", 165 pounds, soaking wet. Um, and I realized that physically, I wasn't there. I also realized mentally, I wasn't there as well. I never really had a mentor or anything like that in high school. I didn't have anybody really prepare me for college. So it was a shell shock in that way. And I realized more, pretty quickly off the bat, that it was more of a business. And you had to treat it almost at times like a job. And those are the things that hit me the hardest right off the bat initially. And those were things that I needed to quickly adjust to, if I wanted to play or even be successful at that level.
And so as you're playing there and you kind of are working your way through, what were some of the biggest challenges and joys that you had in the 2.5 years there at Northern Colorado?
Some of the biggest challenges I think for me were, we had 6 freshmen come in that year because we had a new coach, and then also one junior college transfer. So we had 7 new players under a new head coach. So just having my coach learn how to be a new head coach, all the young guys, jostling for, positions and minutes and time, and trying to figure all out, school and all that good stuff. It was really difficult initially. And my freshman year, we didn't win too many games. I think we only won 4 games my freshman year. And I think 2 of them were actually buzzer beaters. So really, we should have only had won 2 games my freshman year. But it was really difficult coming off of having such an amazing season as a senior and winning, to losing almost every game as a freshman, getting beat up every day, at practice, and just learning the game at another level. That was really difficult. But the cool thing about it is because I was a naturally competitive person, I looked at every single day as a new opportunity to get better. And that was my driving force of every single person that was on my team. I wanted to prove to them that I was a valuable asset to the team. And I also wanted to be better than everybody. I wanted to be a great basketball player. And I knew that I had to lift weights. I had to eat proper. I had to sleep right. I had to really focus in mentally to what my coaches were telling me and teaching me so that I could go from a high school varsity player to a Division I basketball player. And so those up and down learning experiences my freshman year, even though some of them were really tough, some of them were, the catalyst to what eventually helped me become, the player that I was towards the end of my career.
When do you feel like you made, was it, when do you feel like you made that transition where you're like, okay, now I get it, and again, we've never mastered it or completely figured it out, but at what point do you feel like you had a handle on these are the things that I need to be good at in order to be able to get out on the floor and compete at this level?
I think it was my going into my sophomore year initially. I had a sit down meeting with my coach, and he told me everything that I did well, and he told me everything that I needed to work on. And it was a tough conversation for me to have, uh, because he really went in on me on what his expectation was of me, and if that expectation wasn't met, what that meant for my playing time and my playing career, at Northern Colorado. And so what that forced me to do was to go home and really look myself in the mirror and say, if this is something that you really want to do, you're going to have to put in more time than you've ever done before. You're going to have to sacrifice all the other things that um, guys are doing at your age to make this work. If you're not 100% in, you're not going to make it. I wasn't LeBron James. I was a good player, but I couldn't coast. I knew that I had to work, and I had to work harder than everybody else to get to where I wanted to go. And so going into my senior year, I knew what I wanted. I knew what I had to do. I just had to put the pen to paper. And that's what I did. I worked my tail off. I gained weight. It was my second year coming back and understanding the coaches and my teammates and the offense. And that was when I first started to realize, okay, I can play at this level. I don't know if I'm going to be great, but I can play at this level. And that's when I started to really start rolling. And that's when my skill development, my body started to mature. And that's when it started to really start rolling for me, was the beginning of my sophomore year.
So as you get that going, and then eventually you decide that what prompted you to leave then Northern Colorado after you had kind of figured things out?
It was a mixture of things. My parents back home, they were really sick. And like I mentioned before, my father passed away when I was 11. And at the time, my mom and my stepdad were pretty sick. And, we didn't have the financial means to have my mom fly out and watch me play or anything like that. So I had been in Northern Colorado for, 2.5 years basically by myself, and hadn't had anybody watch me play or anything like that. So it was a combination of that, and then also, at that moment in time, my head coach, who I have a great relationship with him now, and he's one of the best coaches in the nation right now. But at that time, he was still learning, in my opinion, how to be a head coach. And he taught me, you know, some of the things that led me to become a professional basketball player. And now years later, I can see where he was coming from. But, as a 19, 20-year-old kid, I didn't handle it all the right way. And I just remember, kind of being depressed at, where I was at, on my team, how we were doing, my family kind of struggling back home. And I had a conversation, with him about, how I felt and what I wanted to do. And at that moment in time, I was a starter on our team. I was playing, 26 to 30 minutes. I was one of our leading scorers and rebounders. So it really wasn't the fact that I wasn't playing or I wasn't, a part of the team. It was just more so, can I go to a different environment that I feel like I can grow and enjoy the game a little bit more and learn? and be closer to family, or do I just finish out here? And ultimately, I made the decision that I wanted to go back home and play for a school closer so my family could see me, and try to develop and learn to love the game. Again, like I said, Division I basketball is a business. If anybody that's played it will understand that, especially after they graduate, they'll understand that. But for me, it was one of those things where I said, hey, you know what? I want to love the game again. I want to just have fun going out and play and getting better. So I made that decision to transfer to Minnesota State Mankato.
So you get there, and you have would you have 2 years of eligibility or one?
So initially, I transferred halfway through my true junior year at Northern Colorado. So I had to sit out the rest of that year. So when I transferred, I technically only had 1 year left. So I sat out the rest of that half year. I started my senior year at the time thinking I only had one season left to go. I later on was able to get a hardship waiver for my junior year, being that I only played 6 years. So I ended up playing there for 2 years. But initially it was only 1 year. So going into that year, I knew I wanted to have fun. I knew I wanted to win. And so Minnesota State Mankato was a Division II school that had a reputation for having a great basketball program, great facilities, great coaches. So I went there and I talked to a couple of my buddies, Jermaine Davis, who I talked about when I was in high school. He was at the University of Iowa in the Big Ten. And I just told him, hey, if you're not having fun there and things aren't going your way, how about you transfer over here to Minnesota State Mankato and let's see what we can do, over here and finish our last year. So he ended up actually transferring over, and I had another friend that was a Division I talent transfer over, and we kind of created a super team that first year.
That's awesome that you guys got reconnected.
LeBron before LeBron, man.
Yeah, I was recruiting before LeBron even did it. People, if they would have known what I was doing, they probably would have hated me.
Now you guys didn't have that plan like 8 years in advance, did you?
And you didn't have like a little not one, not two, not three thing, right?
No, not at all. I mean, it was one of those things where the stars aligned. I transferred and he was struggling, over at Iowa, and he was in the same situation. He just wanted to get back to having fun. And once again, our senior year in high school was one of the best years, if not the best year in my basketball playing career. And so we wanted to relive that again. And we thought, hey, what better way to do that than to come back home to Minnesota, play on the same team and see what we can do for the community.
What made it fun besides obviously playing with some of your buddies? What made the experience there more fun than what you had previously had?
Well, part of it was I went to a program, that had a winning tradition. The coach had been there for, years before I had gotten there. So he was stable in his job. He knew what it took to win. He knew what winning teams look like. He knew how to coach winners. And so the environment was completely different. I went into an environment where people had winning mentality. They knew what it took to win. They knew how to talk like winners. They knew how to walk like winners. And so for me to go into that from where I was at the time, it was a breath of fresh air. I can tell you it made me want to play basketball again. It made me want to contribute to the team. I felt like, hey, if I don't do what I'm supposed to do here, I'm going to feel like I'm letting people down. I'm not holding my part of the bargain up. So it re-energized me. It made me, like I said, want to work harder and do all the things that it took to get on the court and help the team continue the success it had the years prior.
Let's take a quick break and hear from our sponsor, Alan Stein Jr.
Hello, Hoopheads. This is Alan Stein Jr. My new book, Raise Your Game, High Performance Secrets from the Best of the Best, will be available from all major book retailers on January 8th. Raise Your Game takes a rare peek behind the curtain and shows you what the top coaches and players in the game do during the unseen hours. I share their routines, rituals, and habits, as well as proven strategies that you can implement with your team immediately. If you want to maximize your coaching impact and influence, Order your copy today at raiseyourgamebook.com.
Registration is now open at www.headstartbasketball.com for this summer's Head Start basketball camps. We'll be hosting camps this summer in Strongsville, Westlake, Avon Lake, Oberlin, Brunswick, Highland Heights, Mentor, and Hudson. At Head Start Basketball, we care deeply about making a positive impact on the lives of young basketball players, both on and off the court. It's through building strong relationships with our players, parents, and coaching staff that we are able to use the game of basketball to enrich the lives of those we interact with, both inside and outside of our organization. We believe that our attention to detail, our growth mindset, and our commitment to lifelong learning allows us to help our players achieve their fullest potential. We are passionately committed to providing players, parents, and coaches with everything they need to reach their goals. These core values run through everything we do. Check out our website, www.headstartbasketball.com, and discover why you should attend a Head Start basketball camp this summer. Hope to see you there.
So here's a question that I think is relevant to a lot of kids that are, again, in high school that may be going through the recruiting process and they're not sure what level of play they should have. If you look back on the totality of your college career, do you think if you had gone to Minnesota State Mankato first right out of high school, do you think you might have looked back and said, "Oh, I wish I would have, had an opportunity to play Division I"? And because I just think that for a kid, this is one of the decisions that I think is difficult for kids sometimes to see, is that, you want to go to the highest level that you possibly can. I don't think there's anybody out there as a player that there's very few guys who have the maturity / foresight / understanding of everything to know that, hey, maybe if I only have one D1 scholarship offer, but I have, 20 Division IIIs or I have a couple Division IIs, it's very, very hard to pass up that D1 opportunity simply because I think, to get to that level, you have to want to prove yourself. So do you think if you had gone to Minnesota State right off the bat, do you think you might have had regrets that you hadn't tried the Division I experience?
You know what? I think I would have a little bit. And I say that because I had set that goal out for myself to be a Division I basketball player. But at the same time, I didn't really have, like I said, I didn't have anybody mentoring me or telling me, hey, before you make a decision, think about these different things. And I think if I would have had that, I would have probably made the decision to, look at some of my other options that I may have had. And for me now, when I talk to kids, I'm on the opposite side of it where I say, hey, before you make a decision, about whether you're going to play for the one Division I school that offered you or choose from, the 15 to 20 Division II schools that have offered you, make sure that you're going to the place that's the best fit for you. If you're going to just this Division I school because they're Division I and you're going to be the last guy, you're not going to have a ton of opportunity, and it may not be the best fit for you, then you're going to go there and, be in a very, very tough position and get hit with a wall pretty quickly. And depending on the type of person that player is or who they are, they'll adjust accordingly and they'll go on with their basketball playing career. But in my opinion, I always tell kids, hey, if you got a team that absolutely loves you and it's a Division II school and they are telling you, hey, you have an opportunity to be our main guy and we want you to lead us and this is where we see you in this, that, and so forth, that's nowadays, that's a great opportunity, rather than to go to a small Division I school that, they were the only one that offered you and you don't really know where you lie. And so that's a tough decision that, your parents and your people around you that are helping you out as a 17, 18-year-old need to understand themselves as well so that they can help you navigate yourself in the right direction. A lot of times it's ego that takes over. Kids want to say they're Division I basketball players, or Division II basketball players if maybe they're Division III, and that can lead kids to making irrational decisions based on who they truly are as a player and what's ultimately the best fit for them in the end.
Yeah, and I think to your point that if you get good guidance as a high school player, I think you're much more likely to be able to make a good decision There's a lot more information out there too about, different programs and the recruiting process, certainly than there was when I was playing. I tell the story that, I was lightly recruited by Division I schools and had some different interests, but the school that I ended up going to, Kent State, they were recruiting me prior to my senior year in the summer, and they asked me to come down for an official visit. And at that point, I had no idea. My high school coach had never had anybody that played at that level, and my parents had no idea, and I obviously had no idea. And so when Ken called, they said, "Hey, we want you to come down for an official visit." And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to come down, but I don't want to. I don't want you guys to pay for anything. I don't want to take an official visit. I'll just come down on my own," because I still thought at that point that, Duke and Carolina and Ohio State were going to be calling me. So I literally had no idea. And then I had to re-recruit myself to Kent towards the end of my senior, year. And luckily for me, I ended up at the place that, I had an opportunity to play, and it worked out. It worked out great for me, despite the fact that at the time I signed with Kent, that was my only offer, and I only got the offer, I think, because somebody transferred out at the last minute. But it worked out really well for me, but it certainly could have gone a different direction had I not ended up in the right spot. But I think, to your point, by you being able to educate and talk to kids about your experience, I think it's important for people to know that you can make the big time wherever you are, and you really have to find the right fit, whether that's the fit with your coach, the fit with the school, the fit with the academics, the fit with your teammates. All those things are huge factors in ultimately what kind of experience you have at the college basketball level.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, with the way social media is and visibility at the Division III, NAIA, Division II, Division I level, if you're a good basketball player, somebody's going to see you. You're going to get an opportunity. So, nowadays kids, if their goal is to, their end game is to go to college and hopefully play professionally, there's players that are, coming out from every level, every year, all around the world. And so it's a more feasible thing than it was maybe 15, years ago, 20 years ago. And that's one thing I tell players too is hey, you'd be better off going to a Division II or Division III school and playing, valuable minutes, good minutes, maybe becoming a star player, leading your team to wins and championships at a Division II or Division III level than, sitting on the bench, losing games, not having fun at the Division I level. It's all about perspective and how you see it, and ultimately, what's the best fit for you and your family. And it can go either way, like you said, but those are the things that you just sometimes you have to just make an educated guess and go with what your heart feels, and hope that your work and everything else that you put in will lead you down the right path.
So let's jump to your professional career and how you got an opportunity to play professional basketball coming out of a Division II school.
So for me, it's kind of funny. My junior year, like I mentioned, we had all these Division I transfer guys come in, including myself. There was this big buzz around Minnesota State because everybody initially had said, hey, these guys are going to win a national championship. They got basically 4 Division I transfers. We started off the year incredible, had an amazing year. We were beating everybody by 20 to 30 points. At one time, we were ranked the number 2 team in the country. We ended up getting upset in the second round of the NCAA tournament at our own gym. And it was one of the biggest disappointments, I think, for my coaches at the time and everybody else. And we had all the guys that had transferred in were basically seniors. And at that moment in time, I had actually found out that I had an additional year. And so knowing that all of those guys were leaving, I thought to myself, would it be best for me to leave on such an incredible year, even though we got upset in the second round? We had a wonderful year. Would it be better for me to try to, contact an agent, try out for a overseas team, or figure out something to do? And I had a conversation with my coach and my mom, and they said, hey, we want you to finish up your schooling and get your degree. And we want you to come back and finish your last year. And so for me, I said, I don't know what it's going to look like. It might be tough because we're losing, 4 or 5 of our seniors and our Division I transfers, but let's see how it all works out. And it's crazy how things work out. I mean, we had the best season in school history. My last year, we ended up making it to the Final Four, Division II Final Four. We won the Central Region, and because we had such a great year as a team, and for me, I had a really good senior year as well. I was allotted the opportunity to continue my career after that. And the cool thing about it is everybody always talks to me about all the individual accolades that I won. I was all region player. I was named all American by several different outlets. I was one of the last finalists for National Player of the Year. I won all tournament teams and all conference and all these different things. And people always look to that to the reason why I played professionally. But for me, I think part of the reason why I got the opportunity is that my team, we played so well. We were able to go on a national scale and be seen by all these different scouts and all these different people because we won games. And there was a lot of other guys that had better stats than me, better numbers than me, that had also won other awards, but didn't get an opportunity to play because their teams were bad. And so for me, us winning, the conference championship and going to the Final Four and all this stuff was the reason why I got the opportunity at the end of the day to go play professionally. So, after my last game in the Final Four, my senior year, we lost. I was extremely disappointed. The team that beat us actually ended up winning the national championship by 25, 30 points. So it was tough because we were beaten the entire game. But I went back up to my dorm room after all the emotions had subsided, and I jumped on Facebook, and I had about 50 different messages from agents kind of all over the place, Germany, Greece, the US, all over the place, that said, hey, we just finished up watching you play your last game, and unfortunately you lost, but now we can kind of reach out and talk to you. Would you like to chat? And that was kind of the start of everything for me in my professional career.
So we always ask to anybody that's played overseas, what's your craziest overseas basketball story?
The craziest overseas basketball story. I have so many different stories that I can tell you. I played in so many countries. I've been all over the place. But one of the coolest experience I actually had that some of my close friends and family know about. I actually played in northern Iraq. So I actually played in Kurdistan, as it's called. So it's kind of the southern tip of Turkey, but it's technically the northern part of Iraq. And so I went there and I played kind of towards the end of the season in playoffs. They had asked me to come, and I had no idea that they even played basketball there. All I knew is that there was a war a few years prior and that all this crazy stuff was going over there. And I had no idea that they had any sports going on whatsoever. But I'll never forget, I got a call from my agent at the time and said, hey, there's an opportunity to go play at the end of the year into playoffs, over at this team. And I said, you know what? I don't know if it's safe to go over there and play basketball. I mean, I would have never even thought or imagined in my mind that I would go to the Middle East or anywhere over there and play. And I ended up making the decision, opposite of what my mom and all my family wanted me to do. I ended up making the decision to go there and experience and see what it was about. And on top of that, they were paying really, really good money. So I ended up deciding to go there for about 3 months, and I played all over the country, actually, in Turkey and Kurdistan and also Iraq. But the craziest story is I'll never forget, we were traveling from Duhok. It's the northern part of Iraq, technically in Kurdistan, and we had a tournament in Baghdad. And so I was kind of nervous and shocked at first when they told us, hey, we're going to go to Baghdad and play in a tournament, because one, I didn't even know that they played basketball there, and I didn't think it was going to be safe. But I said, hey, you know what? I'm willing to try it. The other American on my team at the time, he said, hey, I'm willing to go and see what it's about. And so we jumped on the road on a bus, and we drove about 3 hours there. The crazy part is we were in the middle of nowhere, the desert, in our bus, and we got pulled over by cops at this rest stop, and they were checking our bus for explosives and all of that crazy stuff. And I'll never forget the officers, or kind of the military they had there, got on our bus, and we only had one person in the organization that spoke English, and Arabic as well. So he told us, hey, just be quiet, don't say anything, just sit down. And my heart is pumping a million miles per hour. We're in the middle of nowhere in Iraq, heading to Baghdad, and nobody really speaks English. And I'll never forget the military guy said, hey, who are these two guys here? And our translator basically said, hey, we play basketball, they're Americans, and they told us to get off the bus. So me and my teammate, we get off the bus, and I'll never forget, we're walking off the bus, and he whispers in my ear, if we gotta run, we gotta run. If we gotta fight, we gotta fight. And my heart is, pumping a million miles per hour, wondering, like, what's gonna happen? Are we gonna get killed out here? Are they gonna put us in jail? Like, I don't even know where we're at. Freaking out. So we go into this security spot building that's run down. There's no windows. It's just a concrete building. And the guys in broken English kind of start to ask us, you play basketball? And we were like, yeah. And they asked us, to jump. And so I kind of was like, what does that mean? And our translator had come in with, and he said, it means jump. So we started to jump up and down. And, I almost started crying. If I'm being honest with you, I almost started crying and thinking to myself, they're messing with us. We're going to get killed out here. And they just kept telling us to jump higher, jump higher, jump higher. And so I'm getting nervous. My teammates looking at me like, hey, we're going to, they had machine guns on them and all this. We're going to go out fighting. And I'm thinking, this is crazy. This is insane. And all of a sudden they told us to stop. And they said, do you know Michael Jordan? And we were like, no, we don't personally know him, but yes, we know Michael Jordan. He's amazing. And then they just started laughing and, talking to our translator and asking about Michael Jordan and all these NBA guys and all this type of stuff. And essentially they just wanted to see how athletic we were or how high we could jump. And that's why they had us doing it. So we ended up getting out of there, and we went to Baghdad, and we played 4 games, but I thought that I was going to lose my life that night. And it was probably the craziest, scariest experience that I had, with basketball, but just in general in life, to be quite honest with you.
Did part of you think to say that you did know Michael Jordan, thinking that might save you?
You know what? I honestly did. But when all those emotions and feelings are going on, and you got your teammate next to you saying that he's going to go down swinging and fighting and running when we're in the middle of the desert, at that time I was just thinking, I'm going to be truthful. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to just do everything to a T in the right way, so that there's no reason that anything bad can happen to me. So I just kind of went with the flow, and whatever came out, and that's kind of what it was.
Jefferson, that's a great story, man.
That's a pretty good one.
That's about that's going to be a hard one to top. We might have to do a lot of podcasts before we top that one. So
Yeah.
nice job on that. We like it.
And that's a story that I haven't told many people. So
well, it's out there now.
It's out there now. Yeah.
All right, well, let's segue from that, because I want to make sure we get enough time to talk about what you're doing now at Dr. Dish and give you a chance to talk a little bit about all the exciting things you have going there. So just very briefly explain how you got to Dr. Dish after your professional career ended, and then we'll get into some of the great things that you guys have going there right now.
Yeah, so when I was playing professionally, I had an opportunity to play in the preseason and in the off season during the summers and work out with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Through that relationship, I started doing camps and clinics as a director, as a trainer, during the summers. And when I was directing camps, I had one of the guys in the Timberwolves and Lynx basketball academy, coming to me and ask me and say, hey, we got this guy, his name is Nick Bartlett. He's looking to get into coaching. He wants to do some camps and clinics. Could he be a part of your staff, and do this whole thing? And I said, you know what? Yeah, that would be great. I'm not directing another camp for, a couple weeks, but that would be, that'd be okay by me. No worries. A few weeks later, I ended up going to a clinic with another one of my good friends, Pat Freeman, and Nick Bartlett actually ended up coming kind of on that clinic trip with us as well. And so that was the first time I met Nick. And throughout that summer and the following summer, we did several camps and clinics together. And then I would go back and I would play overseas. So when I retired, Nick had been, kind of working in the NBA field. He had been doing some coaching and bouncing around, and we hadn't really been in too much contact, but, here or there, we were in contact. And just randomly, after I retired, I got an email from Nick, and he just said, "Hey, I don't know if you remember me, but we did some camps and clinics together, and just kind of checking in to see what you were up to." And I said, "Hey, yeah, definitely. I remember you. We had some good times. And how are you doing? Where are you at?" And he just said, "Hey, I'm with a company called Dr. Dish. We sell shooting machines. Have you ever heard about us?" And I said, "No, never heard about you guys. Shooting machines. I only know about, the other guys over there. What are you guys about?" And through that discussions and whatnot, I talked with the CEO, Doug Campbell there, and also Nick, and they just completely sold me on their vision and where they wanted to go in the next 2 to 3 years. And so after seeing the product and seeing what it was capable of and meeting the people that were, in the company at the time, I said, this is something that I want to be a part of. So I'll forever be grateful to Nick Bartlett, who I know you guys have actually talked to, give me the opportunity to join Dr. Dish. So that's kind of how it actually opened up for me.
So can you explain what you do on a day-to-day basis there?
Yeah, definitely. So I work in partnerships. I also work in marketing with Nick. And then I do a lot of directing of the content that we do. So any of the videos that you see of myself or any of the other videos that we put out with our trainers or anything on behalf of Dr. Dish, I have a hand in creating that idea, in creating that content, and kind of putting it together. I'm also the training specialist at Dr. Dish. So a lot of the drills that we have in the workouts that we have with our machines and a lot of the content that we put out for coaches, a lot of that comes from me and my experience, running camps and clinics, coaching, playing the game of basketball. So I wear, a lot of different hats at Dr. Dish. But, on a day-to-day basis, my focus is, building content, building, content that coaches want to hear, want to learn from, drills and skills, motivational things, and just figuring out ways how we can correlate Dr. Dish basketball to, a coach's everyday life.
Yeah, one of the things we talked with Nick about that, I told him, and I'll tell you the same thing, that I think you guys do a great job of not just selling your product, but also putting out a ton of great information that can be beneficial to somebody, whether or not they're actually a customer of Dr. Dish. There's just so much good stuff that you guys put out, from the video workouts that you have and just the inspirational, motivational stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was one of the things when I started working at Dr. Dish. I had a face-to-face, coffee meeting with the CEO, and I said, "Hey, if I'm going to do this, I want to make sure that you guys want to do things the right way." And when I had that conversation with him, and he told me, "This is what we want to do. This is what we're looking to do. We want to truly help players and help coaches," I was sold. And from that day on, we've continued to look at the different ways that we can help benefit coaches. At the end of the day, yes, we're selling a shooting machine, but we want to make sure that the product that we're selling actually helps coaches and players get better. At the end of the day, we want players to be able to maximize their potential, and we want coaches to have all the tools to help their players reach their goals. And so we understand that does include a shooting machine at times, but it also includes what happens outside of the court. We understand that happens, throughout the rest of practice or during games or in the off season. And so what we've done is we said, hey, how can we build, almost this one-stop shop of content, skills and drills, motivational blogs, tips on how to be a better player, better coach, a place where coaches and players can come in and learn and not feel like, they're boxed into one area or being forced a product down their throat, how can we show them that not only is this product going to help you, but everything else that we bring to the table is going to help you become a better player and ultimately, maximize your potential.
Yeah, and I think you guys are doing a great job of that. Like I said, I love the content that you put out, whether it's the blog posts or the videos, and then obviously you guys have relationships that you've built with a lot of great basketball trainers and skills coaches throughout the country, which we'll jump back to that in a minute. But why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about the latest version of your machine that has just come out, and what are some of the things that make it the best machine on the market?
Well, I can tell you, this machine here is a game changer. When I was introduced to our All-Star, which was our top of the line model at the time, I thought there can be nothing better than this machine here. There's so many training capabilities. It's sleek. It's easy to use, easy to move. There's so many things technology-wise in this machine. There's no way that another machine could ever be better. And we topped ourselves in that. The CT is a machine that's a complete trainer. So oftentimes, you look at our competitor, you look at older shooting machines, you only can really use them in one way, and that's just to shoot the basketball. And obviously you can do that with our machines and the CT as well. But everything else that we bring to the table around that is what really makes it unique. The trainer workouts. The CT has a 15-inch, basically flat screen touchscreen in which players and coaches can watch video. They can see, real-time analytics and stats. They can learn. There's so many different cool things that you can do with this screen that just set it above anything else out there that, kids and players are going to want to just get in the gym and get better. And so with the CT, what we really wanted to do is we wanted the players and the coaches the ability to, almost have that Pelotonish feel of, you have trainers at your fingertips. If you want to work on your shooting, your ball handling, your conditioning, you can do that on our machine. If you want to work on your post play, your game location shooting, you can do that on our machine. If you want to work on your transition shooting, if you want to work on your team shooting, your small group shooting, you can do that on our machine, and you can learn from the best while you do that. And so what we did is we put all these pieces together in this machine. We made it look cool. We made it look sleek. We made it functionally the best out there, and we came out with the complete trainer, the CT.
And so can you talk a little bit about how that correlates with the Dr. Dish app, so that, when a kid or a coach comes with their own device, and how those sync up? Because I think that's one of the features that, if I'm a kid, and especially if I'm, don't own the machine myself, and I'm using it, whether it's at my school or at a private facility, whatever the case may be, and then I could take some of those stats that, come from the machine, that I could pull those off and, and take them with me, so I can look at them not only on the machine, but look at them on the app as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, all of our machines that we ship out, they all work together. So our system is under the cloud. So essentially what that means is like you alluded to, if you have a profile in our training management system and you've built an account, essentially any Dr. Dish shooting machine that you use, you can track your stats. So you could be at college, you could be at your high school, you could be at your friend's house that has, a Dr. Dish, you could be at the local YMCA, and you can always track your progress no matter where you're at. What we did with the CT is with our All-Star shooting machine, we had our app, and through Bluetooth, you would sync up to the machine, and you would be able to track your stats and see kind of the real-time analytics on your phone. What we did with our CT machine is we essentially said, we're going to put all that stuff that's in the phone on this flat screen, on this heads-up display. And so what it allows now for players to do is, if they have an account, whether they had, the app or they had a profile before, now they can simply walk up to the CT machine, type in their phone number or type in their personal passcode, and all of their information will immediately pop up on that touch screen, on that flat screen right there. And so now it's more user friendly. The area, the entry to a barrier is much easier now. Players can just walk in, coaches just can walk in, touch the touch screen, get into their account, whether it's their team account or their player account, and then start working out from there. And then everything that you're seeing on that heads-up display, your stats, your analytics, your tracking, your workouts that you've built, all that good stuff lives on the machine now. So we remove, the need to have your phone or to have the app or to have any of that. Now you're able just to go right into the machine and see all that good stuff right off the bat.
Yeah, that's very cool. So how are you guys going about getting the word out about the machine? Obviously, you have your email list, you have your social media following, but in terms of you getting out there and getting in front of people, what are some of the things and some of the marketing strategies that you guys use to, to get the information out to people about what you guys have going?
Well, I think the first thing was, for us, and the biggest thing is that we've built some great connections in the basketball world. And part of that's due to the fact that, our machines are high quality, high level. In every trainer, every coach that's got our machine has become a believer in Dr. Dish. And so when we started to announce that we were coming out with a new product, I think that there was very high expectations for what we were going to do and what this machine was going to look like. And so we were very fortunate and have been very fortunate to have a lot of trainers and a lot of coaches and a lot of people want to be a part of what we're doing. I think everybody sees the value in kind of our machines and what they bring, on a player level, on a trainer level, on a coach level. And so for us, getting that word out and getting people to spread that word for us, and then also get our machines out there has been a lot easier than I think it was 3 years ago. So our main agenda and main goal is to, make sure that, all the premier teams and coaches and trainers that we're working with, that, they get our highest level machine, they start working on it. They start to show everybody the different capabilities and how they're using the machine and how it works for them, so that word can continue to spread like wildfire, and people, will start to be believers in, this new machine. I think that we're developing almost to a point a cult following of people that are looking to us for daily drills and motivation, and looking for new ways to train efficiently and help their players get to the next level. And so, for us, we're very fortunate once again to work with NBA teams, college teams, and professional trainers that have major influence on the high school coaches, and people all around the country, and working with them and getting machines out to them, and having them post and do all that good stuff definitely benefits us, obviously, on the side of getting more machines out there to coaches all around the nation.
Can you share some of the trainers that you guys have been able to work with? Because I know it's some big name guys that you've been able to have an opportunity to work with, and that, have, again, be on the side of your, of your machine.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just off the top of my head, some of the guys that we're working with, Drew Hanlon, he's obviously extremely well known. The leader of Pure Sweat. This guy's worked with countless NBA players, college players. He just does a fantastic job in teaching the game of basketball. We're very fortunate to work with him. Jordan Lawley, based out of California, another high riser that's been working with a ton of NBA guys, Klay Thompson, Carmelo Anthony, just so many overseas guys too, that has a different flavor, a different way of how he teaches and how he helps players reach their maximum potential. He's another guy that has just been absolutely amazing for us. DJ Sackman, he's a guy located on the East Coast, has a lot of flavor to him. He's a really good guy. We're very fortunate to work with him. But through Hoop Study, and his kind of worldwide connections with going to Czech Republic and Israel and all those good places, we've been really able to be a part of a lot of that stuff. And he just does a fantastic job of teaching the game, and opening, players and coaches' minds to new, unique drills and workouts and things that players can work on. Joe Abundasar, he's been in the game probably the longest out of all the trainers. He's been, in the game training for over 22 years. He's worked with the likes of, Kevin Garnett, Chauncey Billups. I mean, some of the best that have ever played the game. And, the different multi-cut sets and the different ways that he breaks down the game of basketball. These are things that even myself, I had never heard before. We're very fortunate to have him. And then we have a network of, other trainers that, maybe not necessarily are social media sensations are guys that, are working with NBA trainers that do a fantastic, or NBA players that do a fantastic job, with high schools and colleges all over the place, and that have built a tremendous name for themselves. So, like I said, we're unbelievably fortunate to work with, these professional trainers at this level, and to create content with them, because I think each one of these guys brings something different, unique, and new to the table that any coach of any style, any player of any style can relate to one of these trainers and learn something from them. And that's ultimately what we want to provide to, all of our customers.
When you get a chance to work with these guys, do they ever come up with drills, ideas, thoughts of how to put the machine to use in a way that maybe you guys within the company hadn't necessarily thought of?
Oh yeah, all the time. And that's one of the coolest things for me. I know when I started with Dr. Dish and I saw the machine, my mind started spinning of all the different ways that I could utilize, this machine. And it's really cool to see guys like Drew and Jordan and DJ, when we meet up with them and we create content and we film, and these guys are training, some of the kids and pro players that they work with, to see the unique ways that they use the machine is just absolutely amazing. It gets me fired up. And I think that everybody, not only in our company, but all of our customers appreciate that as well, because at the end of the day, they're getting more value out of the machine that they purchased. In some of these guys, I mean, you think of a shooting machine, what do you do on it? You shoot. But with ours, I mean, we got drills working on ball handling and conditioning and, post play and all these different things that traditionally you would never think you would use a shooting machine for. So it just opens up a variety of training, in workouts and drills that, coaches can utilize. And at the end of the day, if you have one machine that can do all these different things for you, your team is going to be successful, and you're going to have a lot of good players.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that versatility is key. You think about a player, going in training, and obviously the more skill you can develop in different areas of your game, the better off you're going to be. And so to be able to do all that on one machine, I think is tremendous. Can you talk a little bit about the balance at Dr. Dish, the company, between the technology side and the basketball side of the business, and how those two sides work together to create the best product possible?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's I think it's one of the more unique things, that I've ever had to deal with and be a part of. I think it's so cool to see, some of these brilliant minded, software engineers and firmware engineers work together, and be in a room with, a guy like me who's basketball minded, and say, how can we put the two together? And so every day, we have team meetings, and we have different meetings of, what the machine is capable of, and what some of the things that, me as a trainer and some of our, NBA trainers, and some of the feedback that we hear from, our customers, how we can incorporate that in the machine. And, these guys, and, ladies are smarter than I, and they figure out a way to make it work. But we essentially say, hey, this is what we want to be able to do with the machine. And if we can figure out a way to make that happen, we're going to take this to the next level. And what they do is they go to the drawing board and they say, anything that we can do, anything that we think we can do, we'll work on it and we'll get it done for you. And just that communication back and forth of what we would like and what we can do, and making it happen, that process is beautiful. And at the end of the day, when a team works well together like that, you get something like the CT that we have, and you create a product that's never been seen before, anywhere, and something that is capable of changing a program around, changing a person's career around, changing somebody's perspective of the game around. And that's a really cool thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the basketball side of it combined with the tech, I mean, we both know, and everybody out there I'm sure knows, that the two worlds are definitely coming together all over the place. When you think about advanced analytics and all the things that, NBA and college teams and the data that everybody has access to. And if you look at the future of where training and coaching and playing the game are going, there's always going to be that intersection of technology and the actual on-court performance of players. And I think it's cool that you guys are kind of on the leading edge of that particular trend.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, when I was younger, we didn't do a lot with stat tracking. There was no analytics, there was no numbers. I didn't really get to any of that until my last year or so in college, and then once I got into the professional world. But as the years have progressed, I mean, that's trickled down to the collegiate levels more, and then now into the high school. And so for us, we were thinking, why can't we bring this technology to the high school coaches? You know, why not do that for them? And we came up with a machine that we have, and we started to see the results on all different levels of coaches being able to do a lot of the same things that college coaches and NBA coaches are doing because of the help of the dish. We know the struggles of a high school coach. You only have maybe one or two or three guys on the staff. You're working another job most of the time as a high school teacher, or doing something else. You're limited in your training. You don't have a ton of people to take numbers down. You might not have a ton of funds. But if you can get all of that in one machine that's going to track your stats, that's going to help with analytics, that's going to help player skill development and progress over time. If you're able to look at these numbers and put your players in position to be successful, then you're gonna get the most out of your guys, and you'll know at the end of the season that, hey, you've put in the time, you've done everything that you needed to do to be successful and feel happy about where you're at. And that's not possible if the technology and the tools aren't there. And that's something that we pride ourselves on, and that's something that we wanted to bring to that level. And I think that we've done a pretty good job so far of being able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of that so far, what is some things, is there anything on the horizon that you guys are thinking about that, obviously you don't want to give away any trade secrets, but is there thought of developing the next level of, I don't even know if it's a shooting machine, but is there something else on the horizon maybe that you have coming or that you see could potentially be something that Dr. Dish could work on in the future?
I can tell you this: we're always innovating, and if you coach, if you talk to a coach, anything that they're struggling with, or wanting to solve to, we're thinking about that same thing ourselves. We're constantly trying to figure out ways of how to track players at a deeper level, how to track ball handling, how to do all these different things that would be valuable for a coach to know and understand, and then also for a player as well. And so if you look at all the different things that our shooting machines and other technology out there are able to do, we're constantly trying to figure out ways to make our company holistic in every way. And so obviously things take time, and technology takes time, and you have to really understand what is beneficial to a coach and to a player. But we're always open ear to some of the issues and challenges that coaches are facing and players are facing, and we're constantly looking for ways to solve to that. So I can tell you that we're innovating. We're always working on some things, and um, when we come out with our next few things, I think people won't be super surprised because we just continue to shock the basketball world.
Keep our eyes open, right?
Oh yeah, you gotta keep people on their toes, and you know how it goes. If you're not innovating, if you're not really trying to help, your customer base and the people that you're working with, you're gonna fall behind in the curve. I can tell you, coaches that have been coaching now for 25, 30 years probably did nothing with analytics back in the day and were super successful. But nowadays, most of the time you have to start to get into some of those things that you've never done before to be successful, or to make your job a lot easier. And so, if you don't flow with the times, if you don't upgrade, if you don't, try new things with analytics and metrics and all that good stuff, you'll get behind the curve. And that's the same thing with business. If you're not trying to better your product or, solve the pain points, and you're going to get left in the dust. And I know for us, that's something that we'll never fall short of.
Absolutely. You better evolve and grow or you're going to be left behind. There's no question about that. Jefferson, this has been fantastic. Before we get out of here, if you wouldn't mind sharing out how people who've listened to the podcast can reach out to you and get in contact with you if they have a question for you personally or a question about the machines or about what's going on at Dr. Dish. Share out your contact information. And if there's anything else that we didn't hit on, if you want to leave us with a parting shot, that would be great too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if anybody has any questions, regarding training, tips, anything around basketball or just basketball in general, they can reach me at on my email at jeffersonm@airborne athletics. That's AIRBORNE athletics.com. Or I'm on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and then also Instagram, Jefferson Mason 4. So I check my DMs daily. I check my comments and all that good stuff, and try to get back to people as soon as possible. So I'm always open to new ideas. I'm always open to new drills and questions that anybody at any level ever has. I'm here to help, and in any way that I can help a player develop or take their game to the next level, I'm more than happy to help out.
Awesome. We appreciate you sharing that out for our audience, Jefferson, and we appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to jump on with us tonight. And to everyone out there, we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.
Hello, Hoopheads. This is Alan Stein Jr. My new book, Raise Your Game, High Performance Secrets from the Best of the Best, will be available from all major book retailers on January 8th. Raise Your Game takes a rare peek behind the curtain and shows you what the top coaches and players in the game do during the unseen hours. I share their routines, rituals, and habits, as well as proven strategies that you can implement with your team immediately. If you want to maximize your coaching impact and influence, order your copy today at raiseyourgamebook.com.
Head Start Basketball's Player Development Academy offers Cleveland area players a unique opportunity to improve their basketball skills. Regardless of a player's age, skill level, or position, training with Head Start Basketball will elevate your game to the next level. Do you want to improve your ball handling, become a better shooter, or develop into a more skilled, confident player? Our Academy classes offer training that's designed to do just that. Our training sessions are innovative and will have you learning skills that are transferable to actual games. We have 4 different class skill levels for boys and girls, ages 4 and up. All Player Development Academy classes will be held at the Strongsville Recreation Center. For more information or to get registered, please visit www.headstartbasketball.com. Thanks for listening to the Hoopheads podcast, brought to you by Head Start Basketball.